Hey everyone, this is Heidi from Hush Hush Magazine. Today I want to talk to you guys about traveling during COVID. I know this is kind of like a hot topic, especially with the holidays coming up. People trying to figure out, should I travel to my family for Thanksgiving or for Christmas? Should I stay at home? If I travel, what's the best way to do it? Am I taking COVID to my parents? Am I a bad person? These are all thoughts I've had myself, and I have quite a bit of experience traveling during COVID, both by air, by land, and so I thought it would be cool for me to share some of the experiences and I guess tips basically that I would suggest to other people that have helped me stay COVID free and stay mentally sane as well while traveling. So let's get into it. So, how do you travel during a pandemic and not take the pandemic to wherever you're going? That's basically the question. And I think that, first of all, I should say that there are different types of travel, I would say. There is kind of like relatively local travel, and then there's, and I would say local travel is like a flight that's like 2 to 3 hours, something like that. And then there's long distance travel, which is maybe like 3 to 7 hours, maybe like a cross country trip. And then there's international travel, which is a whole nother ball game, because at that point you're dealing with international laws, regulations, different quarantine and COVID policies, different levels of seriousness with how different countries are treating COVID and the pandemic and how that's affecting their travel industry. As well as the healthcare systems there, because God forbid you got COVID in a different country, you might not be able to get the healthcare that you need, or if you got, into a hospital, it might not be the same level of quality or consistency or transparency as what you might expect in the US or somewhere else. And so I'll start with the local travel. So if you're doing a relatively short trip, let's say like LA to San Francisco, which is literally just like, I think it's like an hour 30 minutes flight. I think those are the easiest trips to take, because it's basically just like put your mask up, get to the airport, avoid contact with people, get into the plane, avoid contact with people, avoid talking to people, sit there hour and a half, hold your breath, hopefully goes by fast, and then you're there. And it's pretty straightforward. And I think for short term or short distance travel, but also just in general, some of the things that I've done to help me stay sane while traveling is, number one, make sure you have the right materials as you're getting ready for your trip to the airport. So what are the right materials? Number one will be a mask and also backup masks. And so people will be like, okay, why would I need a backup mask? I actually had an experience where I was in an airport and going to my, I don't know what you would call it, I guess going to the gate or whatever like that, and a sneeze came on. It was one of those sneezes that I couldn't really control it. And it was a very wet sneeze, sorry with the details, but just to give you guys, so I sneezed and then my whole mask is like wet and gross. And I want a new mask, because it's like you're about to sit in a plane for 2-3 hours. You don't want to be sitting there with your spit all over your face. And so thank God I had 2-3 masks that were easily accessible. And so then I was able to kind of like find a corner of the airport where people aren't really there, or if you're able, go outside, which is the ideal scenario. And then you can switch out your mask. First, I would say clean your hands, because your hands have been everywhere. Clean your hands, sanitize your hands, and then you can take off that mask. And then I would even sanitize again and then put on the new mask. So first part of the preparation, make sure you have multiple masks on hand, easily available. And then tied to the story I just told you guys, make sure you have hand sanitizer. Either hand sanitizer, or I personally prefer wipes. And that's because I feel like it just does a more thorough job of getting rid of whatever is on my hand, whereas I feel like hand sanitizer, I'm throwing alcohol on top, but if there's any dirt or anything like that, it's still on there. Whereas with a wipe, I'm actually like wiping it off and like mentally that feels better to me. So just find what works for you. As long as it has 60% alcohol, that's the minimum for it to be effective against coronavirus. And so just have whatever it is, the wipe, the hand sanitizer, put that on and make sure that you're using that frequently throughout your trip as you're about to touch your face or about to touch other things. So make sure you have your mask, make sure you have your hand sanitizer or your hand sanitizing wipes. And the third thing I would say is make sure that you have clothes that are easy for you to kind of like remove or toss once you get to your destination. You don't want to have like some super complicated outfit on with like 5 or 6 or 7 different layers, because what's going to be important when you get to your destination is that you can quickly take it off and wash it in hot water, in a hot water cycle in the machine, in the washing machine. And that's important because this is something that I think even health providers do. You basically want to make sure that any particles or things that could have come in contact with you during your trip, for example, like the airplane seat, that could definitely have things still on it. Of course, airplane companies say that, you know, they clean thoroughly and whatever, but you just never know. You can never be too safe. Or God forbid you're in the airport and someone's sitting around you and they sneeze with their mask off because people just don't care. People really just don't care about the pandemic. And I've seen that happen. And so those particles could land on your shirt or land on your jacket. So point is, different things can happen. You want to be able to easily dispose of whatever clothing you're wearing and wash it and have it taken care of. And so for me, I happen to have a jumpsuit that I got from Zara before the pandemic that's turned out to be super helpful because it's just a one-piece outfit, and I put that on and then I can just take it off easily, step out of it, and then toss it into the wash, and I'm done and I'm good. So you're gonna want your mask and backup mask, hand sanitizer, and plenty of it. You don't want to be running on like a little bit. And then also have an outfit that you can easily take off and wash. So I think those are probably the 3 must-haves. And then one more nice to have, I would say, at least for me, is to have like Lysol wipes or Clorox wipes. So these aren't the same as the wipes you would use on your hands. These are a little bit more harsh and chemically. I don't know what is actually in them, but I do know that the Lysol wipes, they now kind of say like, oh, kills the coronavirus specifically, along with a bunch of other different COVID-19 coronavirus, along with other types of coronaviruses. And so I like to have those because, especially if you've checked your bag in or just in general, let's say like if I wanted to use my laptop in the airport because I had to, or use my phone because I had to, I like to just wipe that down to make sure that's clean before I come in contact with it. And then also once I leave the airport, especially if someone is picking me up and I'm about to get into the car, I want to be able to wipe down my suitcase from whoever had contact with it, wipe down my handbag since it was in the airport, just wipe down all the hard, non-porous surfaces that are with me, just to make sure that those are wiped down before I take it kind of back home or, you know, over to wherever it is that I'm going. And the other reason why it's helpful, especially for those of us that are using Uber or other forms of transportation where it's not a trusted friend or somebody that you know, it's really nice when you're getting into an Uber or getting into whatever it is that you're using, a taxi, to be able to wipe down the handle before you go and open it, because so many people have been using it, to be able to just like potentially like wipe down the seat, like just like being able to wipe down the things around you. Or let's say you're in the plane and you want to like pull down the I don't know what that thing is called, I guess the tray basically in front of you. I wouldn't recommend that because that has a lot of bacteria and viruses, but say you needed to for whatever reason, you can pull it down, you can take a Clorox wipe and wipe that down and make sure that that's safe to use. So nice to have Clorox or Lysol wipes. Don't have to do it. You can easily avoid using an Uber or Lyft if you have a friend, or avoid using the table tray, or wipe down your suitcase when you get home. But I like to do it just immediately, just to know that it's done. So I think those are the main things. And then I have a couple of other smaller tips that, like I said, applies to short-term travel, but also just all the forms of travel. Always try to choose a window seat. And this is because if you're in the aisle seat, first of all, I think most companies are not letting people sit in the middle seat. But if they make you sit in a middle seat, fight back because that's not corona safe. But yeah, so the other option then, if you're not in the middle seat, would be the aisle seat. And if you're in the aisle seat, then you have the attendants walking back and forth. You have people walking back and forth to the bathroom. You have some people that be looking down the aisle trying to communicate with other people. And all of that means that you have air and people's breath going by you constantly, and puts you at a slightly higher risk to get something if there's anything to contract on that flight. Whereas if you're sitting at the window, you can basically kind of face straight forward or face towards the window and keep all those particles kind of away from your face and away from your mask, which improves your chances of, not contracting anything, even if there's someone on the flight with something. I know for me, it was helpful on one of my flights because I had some people across the aisle from me who were eating and drinking. And so since they were eating and drinking, they didn't have their mask on. And while they were eating and drinking, they were also talking. And so God forbid they had COVID and they're talking and they're right across the aisle from me. God forbid I was sitting at the aisle seat instead of the window seat. They would have been all in my face. And even though you have a mask on, it's just such close proximity that could put you at a higher risk for coronavirus. So for that reason, I always recommend choosing a window seat if possible. So I think those are probably the main tips in general, and then for short-term distances. For longer-term distances, if you can afford to do it, I recommend trying to get business class or first class because they're more spread out and there are fewer people that are going to be in that part of the plane. And so that also improves your chances of getting COVID or not. And what else? I think those are probably all the main things I have to advise. And I think the number one thing throughout the trip is to avoid taking off your mask. And I say this because I've seen so many people when I'm traveling who are taking their mask on and off in the airport, in their flight, because they want to take a sip of water, because they want to eat whatever, because they're hungry. No, guys, you need to take care of that at home or outside of the airport before you get in, because once you're in there, you have so many people in the airport. You have so many people just doing whatever they want. I don't want to say it's easy to get COVID, but if there's COVID there, you can get it. You can get it. And so the best thing you can do for yourself if you need to travel and you don't want to stay home for whatever reason is to keep your mask on at all times. And if you need to take it off, like I said before, find an area that's isolated from people and then sanitize your hands. Do what you need to do quickly. It should be like a minute or two, not eating a whole meal for 10 minutes. And then keep it moving. Your goal is to get in and get out as quickly as possible. That's basically your goal when you're going through that airport. And so I think I'll stop there because it's already a pretty long video at this point. But these are the main tips, the main things that I've been doing to stay safe. I've traveled to Seattle, to LA, to New York, and these trips were all, I would say, either because I needed it for my mental wellness, or because I needed it just like there were things going on, like there was business I needed to take care of, and so I needed to do it. And so instead of just feeling guilty and bad about traveling, do it in a way that's safe. And obviously, if you're sick, if you think you have COVID or think you came in contact with someone that has COVID, don't go on that flight. Don't take it to spread it to other people, obviously. And so if you're feeling fine and you just need to make a trip for whatever reason, just make sure to keep your mask on, keep your hand sanitizer on you, stay away from people, stay away from the aisle seats, and just keep the interaction and the trip as brief and seamless as possible. You want it to be boring and not interesting. And that is what will get you through. So I hope that's useful. Let me know if you have more questions. I'm happy to make more videos about this. since I've been traveling within the US quite a bit, and I think I'll make another video later about why I have not traveled internationally during COVID yet. So thanks for watching, and subscribe if you like this content so that I can keep making more things like this.